It didn't take too long for someone to leak the full E3 gameplay demo of Marvel's Avengers, and it's actually much better than most people expected. I won't be able to show any of it unfortunately, but I can provide a link down below you guys can follow, and there's some 10 minutes of gameplay you can check out. It's been shown behind closed doors and someone was able to capture it with its cell phone. I can't talk about it though, so I will do that, as well as going over some brand new details. And if you want a full breakdown of the gameplay, then you can check the previous video I made a few days ago. There's also a lot of talk regarding the way the characters look, so let's dive right into this. Also a quick shout out to Instant Gaming for sponsoring this video. This is a website where you can buy games really cheap, so make sure you follow the links down below if you want to get some of the best discounts you can find around. But with that being said and done, let's dive right into this and the characters themselves, because it seems that the fan base is rather split in half on this one, on the way the characters look. I know many of you guys don't really have a problem with the new looks, while the others might see some problems with them. In a recent IGN interview with the lead creative director from Crystal Dynamics, it was confirmed that there's no current plans to change the character design, so what we see right now in the footage might very well be the same stuff we end up in the full game. But since the trailer is showing pre-alpha gameplay footage, that means that the level of detail and overall polish of the character models will absolutely continue to improve as we get closer to launch. So there it is. It seems that a lot of this controversy sparks from the fact that the characters, as they are portrayed currently in the game, are somewhat in a combination between the actual actors who play them in the movies and the old comic looks, and this creates a sort of uncanny look that makes the in-game characters look like cheap knockoffs to some people. But after checking some of the old comics I could find around, the characters do appear to be in line with the old depictions. I think Black Widow and Tony Stark are probably the best examples in this regard. They look pretty close to how they looked in the old comics, but of course they have their own spin on it, like Crystal Dynamics brought their own spin on it. They do come pretty close, though you really have to understand that the looks always change over time quite significantly, even from one comic book to another, and Crystal Dynamics were also encouraged by Marvel to bring their take on it and were given quite a lot of creative freedom, according to a recent interview with one of the studio's leads. It's the same approach that Marvel had with Insomniac's version of Spider-Man, for example. The game also had its fair share of criticism right before launch, but it still ended up being one of the best games ever made, and it's definitely in my top 5 list of best games and my most enjoyable game I had so far. Also, as graphics keep improving from one generation to another and we get more and more realistic looking faces, I think it's rather inevitable that characters will have that uncanny valley feel to them. This is something that has already been happening for a number of years. As faces get more realistic, it definitely brings that feeling to them. I already explained about my opinion in the previous video that I made. I think for the most part these characters are fine, their depictions in the game are in line with what we got used to, maybe with the exception of Captain America. I think that he's probably the least one I liked of the bunch, but of course time will tell if this will change. Now tell me what you think about this. Do you like the character design in Marvel's Avengers now that we saw their comparison with their comic book versions? Comment your opinion down below, and in the meantime let's get back on track with the actual gameplay leak. I really wanted to go over this, I really wanted to show it, but yeah, Marvel is going to take it down in an instant, so I'm just gonna post a link to it. I already went over an extensive breakdown in the previous video I made if you want to check it out. I believe that one is for the 25-minute version of the gameplay and not just 12 minutes as it's shown in this leak, but even so there's a lot of details we can go over. I'm not going to like just break down every single action, it's really hard to see because it's filmed with a cell phone, but I will go over the general impressions that it gave me, and as well as a lot of other fans. So what I liked most about it was the fact that the combat feels very similar to the one in Marvel Spider-Man, and by that I mean not the actual skills or attacks that it's used. Obviously each Marvel character has its own set of attacks, but I'm talking more about the character controls, the way you engage with enemies, the flow of the battle, and the seamless blending between sections of actual gameplay and cutscenes. So it's really close to Insomniac's version of Spider-Man. The gameplay definitely reminds me of that, except that instead of a very agile and acrobatic Spidey, we have each individual Avenger with its own set of skills and movement controls, and they definitely feel very distinct from one another. So Thor has his hammer attacks and godly powers, he has his electric attacks that he can use. Iron Man flies around with ease, but he can also fight on the ground, use his blast attacks and beam. Hulk is just wrecking everything in sight and definitely feels heavy. His heavy hitting attacks pretty much wreck everything in sight. Captain America's shield throwing makes for some really fun gameplay. It's definitely fun, or at least it looks fun to control that character. And I think out of all of these, Black Widow is the closest to the way Spidey plays in Marvel Spider-Man. So it's really close to that because she's also very agile. She also uses melee attacks like punches, kicks, but she is quite distinct from that as well. She doesn't have the web swings, and of course she also uses a pair of guns. So if anything, I think she plays closer to Silver Sable from that game, for example. She definitely reminds me of that, even though they are very distinct characters. Also, the way you dodge enemies or are prepared to dodge kinda slows down a little bit time. So right before an enemy does an attack on you, if you time it right, if you time your dodges right, it kinda slows down a little bit. Very similar to the way it does in Marvel Spider-Man and even in the older Arkham games. Now, the footage that was shown behind closed doors is in a very early stage, as we're talking about a pre-alpha version over here. Still 1 year to go until the game fully comes out, and of course it's also going to get support after that. So some of the character animations might look a little bit stiff, they're not yet fully finalized, and they could use some more improvements. The graphics quality will also most probably get an update as the game gets closer to release, but even so, the gameplay looks quite polished, and it got a lot of people, more than a few people, quite hyped about it. It seems that a lot of opinions have been shifted following this leak, so to speak, and in fact many suggested that Crystal Dynamics should have shown this gameplay footage at E3, maybe even before the actual trailer. And this comes from both content creators that attended that event, gaming reporters, as well as fans likewise. So it seems that a lot of people are actually getting excited about this, so there's a lot of pressure on Crystal Dynamics and Square Enix to make it as good as possible. It wouldn't have been such a bad idea to release the gameplay anyway, especially now that we have the confirmation that it looks pretty dope, but I also understand why they didn't, why the companies have chosen not to show it too much. Marvel's franchise is one of the most beloved franchises in the world, so I understand why Crystal Dynamics and Square Enix are so cautious about it. The game has been several years in the work already, there's still plenty more to go until it's out, so it makes sense for them to tread carefully, especially now that Marvel is giving them and encouraging them even to have a lot of creative freedom, so they can't really afford messing too much up. Finally, I also want to talk briefly about the possibility of a crossover between Marvel Spider-Man and Marvel's Avengers. In Marvel Spider-Man there was a mention of the Avengers not being in New York City, actually being on the West Coast on their new headquarters, and of course we already know what's happening over there, but it seems that these universes aren't really that connected as we thought. Of course, Crystal Dynamics has reported that they want to take their own spin on it, so I don't think there's going to be much of a crossover between Marvel Spider-Man and Marvel's Avengers. Maybe there's going to be some in-game, let's say, Easter eggs, but I don't think it would make sense for Crystal Dynamics to bring another Spider-Man into their game when there's already a game being developed by Insomniac Games. And it's going to be interesting to see how these companies move forward. Is there going to be any collaboration between them? Is there going to be any crossover of any sort? My personal opinion is that this is going to remain quite separate, and there might be some attempts between the companies to like mention one another and mention one of the universes, but with the multiverse theory and all of that, I think there's a big chance that that's not going to be the case. I would much rather have a Marvel Spider-Man video game separate from actual Marvel's Avengers, given how important are the controls for a proper Spider-Man video game. I mean, Insomniac Games took like what, 5, 6, maybe 7 years to fully develop that proper gameplay, and it's not something you can cramp up into one single game, especially so when there are so many important characters. And besides, with Marvel Spider-Man already selling over 10 million copies, I believe, I think it's pretty much guaranteed that there's going to be a Marvel Spider-Man 2 developed by Insomniac, so this is most likely what's going to happen. We're gonna have separate timelines or separate video games at the very least, and I think Crystal Dynamics will avoid introducing Spider-Man in any way in their game and probably concentrate on other characters that should probably get a little bit more of that spotlight. But I do like what I'm seeing so far. I think the gameplay is definitely much better than the trailer. So tell me what you think about it. What is your take on this? Have you checked the leaked gameplay yet? Did you like it? Did you have any complaints about it? So comment down below, and in the meantime, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Also subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell for more awesome videos like these, and I will see you guys next time.